Well, hello, everybody. It's another Tuesday, another episode of Into the Pit. I'm your host, Kyle Yates. I'll be doing this alone this evening because, well, my buddy Chris got a gig tonight, and it's a paying thing, so I'm not going to take him away from it. I know y'all missed me. I've been away for a couple of weeks, just had to enjoy the holidays. But we're back. We got another great show, and we have special guest, Todd Neiss. Hello, Todd.
Hello, how are you?
Doing wonderful. So tell me about you, where you grew up, and a little bit about the history of you.
Well, I grew up in the Portland metropolitan area in Portland, Oregon, and mostly suburban, and always had a thing about nature and wildlife. And anyway, so eventually joined the Oregon Army National Guard in 1989, and that's kind of where things got a little bit crazy as far as what happened to me and where we're going. I don't know how much detail you want, but
hey, tell us everything. Give us the dirt.
Well, I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version. But as a combat engineer, a lot of what we do is demolition, high explosives, and annually we would go up into some private timberland with special permission, and it's a very secure area, and we would do explosions in 3 different rock quarries, if you will. And on that day, April 3rd, 1993, we were doing just that, and we just set our last charges, got back in their vehicles and hightailed it out of there, and we'd go to a safety area, wait for the explosion, go back and check. It was while we were convoying from the cratering charge that we had just set down to the safety area. I was a passenger in a Humvee, one of 4 vehicles in the convoy, and sitting behind the driver. It was a nice day, so I had my arm out the window, and I'm glancing about the countryside just looking for deer or elk, because I had hunted that area quite a bit. And we came around this corner, and the second rock quarry, which was our second blast site, if you will, we had detonated quite a few charges maybe an hour earlier. That comes into sight and across this ravine, and I noticed these 3 jet black, huge, at first I didn't know what to think. I tried to, your mind kind of makes you want to, is those 3 guys, is that 3 bears all standing up? And it just didn't make sense. But within just a second or two, it was like, I'm looking at Bigfoot. I'm looking at 3 of them.
Wow.
And they're looking at us. They're looking at us. Looking at them, looking at me. But this wasn't like a, 2-3 seconds, something ran in front of my car kind of encounter. I watched them for nearly half a minute. And it was obvious what I was looking at were not human, although they were, standing upright. And but from there, they pretty much differed from us. Their arms went down below their knees. Their legs were longer than ours. And these were anywhere between 7 and 9 feet tall. But what, if you can visualize it, the one in the center was the tallest of the 3. They were standing all shoulder to shoulder, facing our convoy. I would estimate that one at about 9 feet. And then the 2 on either side of the larger one were about 7 feet, came up to about its shoulders, but just huge and built like bodybuilders, with just extra long arms and legs and really no neck to speak of. But I can see it now, just like it was yesterday. But what really stuck out was that The one in the middle, it stood there just stiff as a board, just didn't move a bit. But the two on either side of it were doing this rocking back and forth motion, like just shifting weight from one foot to the other. And in the process, you could just see the arms swinging down below the knees. And they did that the two on the outside did that the whole, 25 seconds I watched them. I mean, it was pretty obvious that these weren't human at all. But it gets a little more interesting because we eventually, not too far after we turned the corner and lost sight of it, we got down to the safety area. And I wanted to try to get another look at them, so I kind of jogged back up the road. And I quickly found out I wouldn't be able to see over it, this knoll, and I couldn't, per SOP, I could not, separate from the group. So, but it was while I was standing there, on my tiptoes, trying to look over this little ridge, another sergeant approached me and said, he saw me that I was looking off in the distance. He goes, "What you looking at?" I said, "Nothing." And he got a little closer and said, "I don't suppose you saw what I saw down at that second blast site." And, of course, I ain't going to be the one to say it first. So I said, "I don't know, Jeff, what did you see?" And that's when he said, "I saw 3 hair-covered, huge Bigfoot, I guess." And, of course, it was nice to have that corroboration, but it wasn't that I would need that, but it was nice to find out that somebody else had seen it. And independent of me, my vehicle. So anyway, being at that time a traditional guardsman drilling 1 weekend a month, we wouldn't meet again for another 30 days. So in May, we had 2 more soldiers come forward and say that they saw them as well. So there's 4 U.S. soldiers, very sober, serious, dangerous situation, all saw the same thing. So it's very unique. Multiple animal sightings are rare in and of themselves. Multiple animal sightings with multiple witnesses are even rarer. And then you take into account the activity we were doing out there, just, blowing up the woods.
Man, weren't you afraid that they were going to think you were crazy?
What's that?
Weren't you afraid they'd think you were crazy when you told them that?
Excuse me just a moment.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
Did I think people were going to think I was crazy? I'll tell you what, even when I did find out about Jeff and the other 2 guys that said they saw it, I wasn't in a hurry to tell anybody, family, friends, maybe, people that know me well enough to know that I wouldn't, just make something up like that. Never have. No, I kept it quiet for a while. But, word gets out, and after a while it's just like, you know what? If people believe me or not, it doesn't change the truth, the fact that they're out there, So, no, I've gotten over that probably 25 TV documentaries ago.
So you said there was other soldiers that seen them. They saw all 3 of them?
Yeah.
Okay, that was a question that got sent in, and it's like I don't remember hearing him say that. But before we go further, first of all, from all of us at Into the Pit, we'd like to thank you for your service, and that's that means a lot to us. We support our military, our police, firemen, the whole 9 yards, and y'all put your lives on the line to keep us safe. So we appreciate you.
we all support each other.
Exactly. And you said you grew up in Oregon?
Yes, mostly, like I said, until I got through high school, it was mostly in the Portland area. But I've spent many moving, rental van, moving out of the city. I'm not a city person. I don't like the traffic and everything goes with it. So I've moved to the coast. I've moved to the mountains 3 times now, and that's where we're at now. We're at the southwest foot of a 11,320 foot volcano.
Wow.
Mount Hood. Yeah, that's our. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's snow-capped year-round, and as long as it doesn't go off, we're good.
So, beavers or ducks?
Platypus.
Platypus. I don't know that college.
Well, you got the duck bill and the beaver tail.
Yeah.
No, I don't have a dog in the fight other than, ducks. Go Ducks.
That's me. I love the ducks.
Yeah, they did really well.
Okay, so did you go to the area where they were at to see if there were footprints?
Yeah, interesting you should say that, because initially on that same day, per our SOP, we had to go back everywhere where we did some blasting. There was always some sort of mess to clean up, if you will. I mean, we blew some steel I-beams in half with C4 down at first site. We did a minefield breach at the second one, and anyway, you got shreds of metal and razor wire and whatnot all over the place. So we had to go back to each of these areas, and we didn't go back to the second one where these things were until the very end. And by this time, Jeff and I were like onto each other. We were like, yeah. When we got there, they're like, okay, everybody spread out and look for, parts of mines and whatnot. So, of course, he and I veered a lot farther away than anybody else, but we're trying to get up to where they were at. But again, this is a gravel quarry.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to get a really good track in that.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, we did try to do that. But as far as going back in there, I mean, we didn't find anything, although we were surprisingly found mine parts.
Wow.
Further away than we thought. But that being said, I did get access to this highly secured timber company land holdings through Peter Byrne, who wanted to get out there and investigate this sighting.
Mm-hmm.
I contacted them at their 1-800 Bigfoot number. I can't make that up. But I don't know how, because the military, we had to get special permission to get in there. But sure enough, he had me meet him up at the gate one weekend, and he's like, "Here's the key. Open the gate." And I had access to that key. After he had left, he just gave it to me, and I had unfettered access, all the master key for all the gates all throughout this huge area. And so, I went back quite often and tried different things. We went back on the anniversary, pretty close to the anniversary of the time I saw them, thinking maybe if they're migratory, at least if they are, we know they're in there at that time. And so that was my first expedition on the anniversary. No, I've tried different things up there, and they're in there. They're in there. But we have found a lot of evidence, heard a lot of evidence. I actually got 1998. I had put together an expedition about 5 miles east of where I had my sighting at the base of Saddle Mountain. Again, having keys to get through all the gates to get up there. And I had one roar at me from probably about 70 feet away. That didn't show itself.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, there was nothing out there. I've been in the woods a long time. I know what cougars sound like, what elk and bear sound like. This was like nothing. And it sounded very angry. Might have had something to do with the fact that I just had taken a leak in its territory. So I think that's what set it off. But it scared the hell out of me.
I think you might have mentioned it earlier, but what color were they?
If they were not black, they were very, very dark brown.
Very dark brown. So all the same color?
Yep.
And Jennifer sent in a question and was kind of curious about that, and if you thought maybe they were a family.
Well, it wouldn't strike me as odd if there were two together than it does that there were three, because that tells me that they are working together. They're not solo like a lot of bears. When males especially, they're pretty much solo all the time. These things apparently are more social, group-oriented, clan, whatever you want to call them. So whether they were family or just an adult and two adolescent, I wasn't close enough to make out that kind of detail, but they were all built like bodybuilders. I mean, barrel-chested, tapered waist, just muscular as heck.
And you couldn't get close enough to check their genitalia anyway.
Right. Which is a good thing.
So this is just, I guess, a personal opinion, but I got a question that came in wanting to know, do you think that because they seem to be very intelligent the way they're able to elude people, do you think that maybe they have a capability of speech, or it's just howls and growls and things?
No, that's a great question, and I would say without a doubt they have a language. I've heard way too many examples of it. Notably, Ron Moorhead's Sierra Sounds, the second volume he came out with. These were recordings taken in the High Sierras, sort of north of Yosemite, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very, very remote area back in I think it was the late 70s, getting into the early 80s, that they were getting these visitations at this remote camp. And like I said, in '98, I had Ron Moorhead and Peter Byrne on my team. And Ron had brought the original tape. So this is when he had only come out with the first CD several years back. And so I started just going through these cassette tapes, and then I'm listening to them, and I'm like, wow, there's a bunch of stuff on there did you hear that? That was a word. And sure enough, you'd hear this. It's just like two, in this case, you could tell it's two different creatures talking back and forth, but this one says this, fuck. That's the best way I can demonstrate it. It was like fuck, and it repeats 5 times within about 2 minutes. Every time, every successive time I heard it, my eyes got bigger and bigger. I'm like, that's a word, because it was intermixed in other different sounds. But Scott Nelson, which is he was a naval linguist, a cryptolinguist who would be able to decipher codes and foreign languages and things like this in the military. He studied these tapes, and he's actually come up with a phonetic, not so much an alphabet, but just a category of where you located some 20-some-odd sounds that they make.
Wow.
And has isolated them. He says they are, the way they're arranged, it is a language. They're smart. In fact, my thing is, just to have that capability genetically. I used to go from the standpoint that these were some sort of primordial ape, some I would say primate, but we're all primates, right?
Right.
But I'm tending more to believe that they are a relic hominid.
Okay.
In other words, a very ancient primal tribe, something akin to oversized Neanderthal. Who knows? But it's just the traits they have, the intelligence level they have, the bone structure and the voice box and everything that would have to. Yeah, it would take an ape forever to get there. And oh yeah, by the way, we still have apes. So,
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's more mysteries out there than just this creature, and that's what's kind of cool about the whole thing.
Well, like I've read that cats have the ability to speak if they wanted to, but they just don't. And possibility. Do you think maybe on the lines of some type of Native American language, or no determination?
It has. Some of the tracks I've listened to, some people call it samurai chatter.
Mm-hmm.
And it does have that kind of Asian sound to it, but it also sounds like a native language as well.
Wow.
There's some recordings coming out of Cottage Grove area, just a couple hours south of here, that you can clearly hear something, and this is like from half a mile away, but this guy had been recording this stuff he'd been hearing it for months. He finally said, if I got to put up with it, I'm going to tape it. So there's, but it's like this, sounds like an elder, big Native American going off for like 10 seconds. I mean, no two sounds alike, like stringing words together, and sounding at the very end like it was a question. It's like he's asking. I don't know. It's really hard to figure out, but we're having those analyzed. There's ways to do it with audio spectrographs and whatnot, and I'm looking forward to getting down there and actually doing some recording of my own.
So, as a educated guess here, how many investigations, expeditions, however you want to call it, how many have you been on?
How many have I been on?
Mm-hmm.
How many have I organized? Take the shorter list. I've put together about, now of course this is over the course of 26 plus years, about 10.
Okay.
And I'm what I call an expedition isn't going out for a weekend and getting home in time for the ball game. I'm talking, a week or longer. I think my last major one I did, you'll get a kick out of this, it was called Operation Sea Monkey. And the reason I called it that was because I'd been in touch with a First Nations bush guide out of British Columbia, and he and I were on a documentary like 20 years ago,
mm-hmm.
longer than that, and he recognized me at one of these conferences that we were both attending, and we we're like, oh yeah, that was you. We changed. It's been 19 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, he came to visit our home up on the mountain, and he was reading through this trifold brochure that we have for our nonprofit organization, the American Primate Conservancy. He's going through this trifold, and in it talks about, we've got this 42-foot yacht that we're wanted to take up to Canada and explore these islands and inlets that are absolutely wild and uninhabited and do it by sea.
Mm-hmm.
When he saw that, he's like looking at his calendar going, we got to go now or pretty soon. And I said, why? I said, I'm active duty Army. I can't just take off for like 3 months.
Right.
He's like, well, even for a week, he says, this is when the clam tides come in at the end of September going into October. This is when my people for thousands of years have gone down to the beaches to dig clams, and the wolves know how to dig the clams, and so did the bear, and so did the Sasquatch, and that's when they're seen quite often. They come down to the shoreline, getting cockles and clams and mussels and whatnot. And anyway, he talked me into it, but I'm like, we got 3 weeks to do this. And I said, we need a team. We need obviously money,
mm-hmm.
And a boat. And he goes, well, I'll hook you up with the boat. I got a lot of friends up in Campbell River. This is on Vancouver Island. He said, you take care of the money in the research team. I had 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Did my first GoFundMe ever, and in 3 weeks we raised almost $7,000.
Wow.
And off we went. And it was amazing. We took a 50-foot trawler out of Campbell River, brought along a lot of good gear. We had a great team. Ron Moorhead, author, and we just talked about the tapes he had made, and good friend of mine, Tom Steenberg, that he's a published author of three books on Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, we rounded out a pretty good team, and we anchored offshore of 5 islands in the archipelago in 6 days.
Mm-hmm.
And we would get to an island, drop anchor, go ashore. We had 2 inflatables, Zodiacs, and we'd go to shore and look for sign and put up game cameras. And I have a very unique set of seismic ground sensors that will actually detect footsteps on the ground.
Oh, wow. So,
and
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Anyway, the whole premise was that we would watch the shorelines, especially at night. So we'd get all the gear set up, come back to the boat, and then take turns, take shifts, 2 hours at a time through the night with a very expensive pair of FLIR, a FLIR scope. And we didn't find the Holy Grail, but we gave it a good college try, and that's just the kind of innovative, different ways you got to approach this, because nobody's got it right yet.
I hear you. So, what's your best evidence to date?
Mine or in general?
In general, with either you or whoever was on these on these little trips that you take.
Well, we're getting a lot of wonderful wildlife shots, I'll tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
No, seriously, we put up at the 5,000-foot elevation, we put 9 cameras for 8 months through the winter. And again, I mean, this is a needle in a haystack,
mm-hmm.
but in the process, you get some pretty cool pictures of cougars and bears, bobcats, and you name it. But that's just one technology we can use. We've got a very high-end 4K drone that we use as well. We've got, like I say, the ground sensors. Trying some different stuff. Just got to try different techniques. The thing is, the best thing you can do is find an area that has some current activity, that's showing some current sign. Mm-hmm. Get in there and put that stuff up. If you can, afford to put together a team, stay back from that equipment, but be within range of at least knowing if it's being triggered, and spend the week out there, spend a month out there. That's really what I want to do. I did 9 days right after I retired from the Army, probably 20 miles from here, but we're in the middle of the mountains anyway. But just spent 9 days out there.
I would love to go on one of these investigations, but I would really love to go blow stuff up with you.
Well, it's your lucky day. I just sold this motor yacht I have, and I'm cleaning it out. I found my long lost bag of fireworks. So you're on.
You've come across footprints up by them before, haven't you?
Oh, sure. But I'll tell you what, I may very well come up, and I mean, with the amount of time I've been out in the woods, I probably came upon footprints before I ever had this sighting. Mm-hmm. Because I think in hindsight, if you don't believe something happens or something exists, then that evidence that you're looking for, a lot of times you just dismiss as an odd-shaped divot in the ground, or boy, that's a big series of craters, but I mean, you might just, I can tell you, once you've seen them and you're not believing they exist, but they do, the evidence is out there. Mm-hmm. all over the place. It's just a matter of being able to identify it, and there's a lot of people out there looking at crossed up branches and sticks and saying, "Oh, Bigfoot did that," and everything. No, footprints are probably some of our best evidence. It's only a matter of time before we get some really good video. With technology coming a little bit cheaper and trickling down, it's going to happen. It's really a matter of odds, and I don't have a problem with that, because I tell people, we might be standing outside somewhere, and I give them an analogy. Now, Dr. Henner Fehrenbach is a good friend of mine, primatologist, and he's one of those few scientists that stepped outside the box and was willing to entertain this. And he came up with an estimate based on caloric intake, based on great ape or gorilla caloric intake needs, and extrapolating from that, and then the resources out there, what's available to eat to make up those calories. He said that between the Cascade Mountains and the Coast Range, he figures it about 2,000. Wow. Now, a lot of people would go, "What? 2,000?" Well, 2,000 of anything spread out. Peter Byrne tells me that he had no idea, because he spent his time in the Himalayas, or the Himalayas as he would call them. Mm-hmm. And he says, although the Cascade Mountain Range is not as tall, obviously, as Himalayas, he said the footprint, the square mileage, is by far bigger than the Himalayan mountain range. So, anyway, you've got the Coast Range starts Cape Mendocino, California, goes all the way up into the Washington's Olympic National Park. And then the Cascades start at Mount Lassen and go all in Northern California and go all the way into British Columbia. If you just take those two ranges alone, that's a hell of a lot of, not only a hell of a lot of square miles, but probably 90% of it uninhabited.
Right.
Okay, so what I'll do as an analogy, I'll be someplace and somebody will go, how could 2,000 anything not be caught and this, that, and the other thing? I said, okay, you see this mountain range over here? And I'll point, to my right. I'll say, okay, you see that, or you see that hill there? Yeah, okay, you see the other side? It's like, what, a mile long? Yeah. I said, okay, I'm going to play a little game. That hill over there represents the entire combination of the Coast Range and the Cascade Range. Okay, just for scales now, and I'm probably going too big, but I'm gonna pour out 2,000 copper BBs, like for BB guns.
Mm-hmm.
And you give me a day to go up on that hill. You can't look, but I'm gonna go up there and I'm gonna hide these BBs. You think you could find those? If I gave you a week. Well, I don't know. I'd probably find one, so we can't use metal detector. No, but I'd stumble upon one, there's no doubt. I said, okay. Now, little caveat. Those BBs, they're not going to be shiny copper. I'm going to spray paint them brown and black. Now I'm going to hide them up there. Think you can find one? Well, that'd be a lot tougher. Okay, one more caveat. These BBs can hear, smell, see much better than you or I, and, they can move. Now find them. Game over. They don't even want to talk about it after that. I mean, it really is a matter of space and quantity and wilderness. It's not that they're not being discovered. They're being seen, I swear, almost on a daily basis anymore. If you, keep your ear to the ground, it's when you figure 1 out of 10 people that see one of these things even, has the courage to come forward public about it. So for all the reports we hear, there's probably 9 more we haven't. So, but it's just, for me, it's nothing more. And then there's always the age-old question: if these things exist, we'd have a body or a carcass. Where's the body?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll tell you something. I don't know about Texas, but I can tell you up here, nature's a real good recycler.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Case in point, shot an elk, a Roosevelt elk, in the Coast Range. And it was a snowy day, a little bit of snow on the ground, but I could get through it. We only had a 2-wheel drive truck at the time. And as I started to field dress this elk, the snow just started coming in like a blizzard. And I was kind of down in this hole, and I needed to be able, go uphill before I could get out. I was getting very concerned about having traction with 2-wheel drive. So rather than do a real complete field dressing, I took the hips, the rumps, the shoulders, backstrap, of course, and pretty much left the rest of it there. Mm-hmm. Left more than I would have wanted to, but I was really concerned about my safety. I went back there exactly 3 weeks to the day, and I'm estimating there was probably at least 200 pounds of carcass still there when I left the first time. I got back there 3 weeks later, and you could not tell there was any animal there ever, period.
Wow.
It was gone. It could have been, well, I take that back. There was one probably 8-inch around piece of hide that got stuck in the brambles, salmonberry brambles. And other than that, I walked all over that place looking for a skull or a leg or anything. It was gone. All of it was just gone. It could have been gone within a week, as far as I know. I just know within 3 weeks. It was gone. Yeah, that's not uncommon. Peter Byrne will tell you, with his experience in Asia, he'd tell you that a full bull elephant, Asian elephant, could disappear within 72 hours. Disappear.
Dang. So our one of our listeners, he's always in the chat room, he had several questions. I'd like to see how many I could fit in. But what would you say the average length of a Bigfoot's foot would be?
Again, I think there's probably some dimorphism between male and female, but when we're talking about adults, I'd say males go use about 17 to 19 inches.
Wow.
And females maybe 20% less than that. And of course, you got to keep in mind, there's baby ones.
Mm-hmm.
And they tracks too, but they have 5 toes just like we do. They've got that kind of peanut shaped, footprint, but it's much wider. It's just proportionally wider than longer than humans. There's,
Unless you're playing basketball.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because my friend Larry Lund over here in Vancouver, Washington, he had a pretty good Bigfoot collection at one time. I don't know that he does so much anymore, but one of the things he kept in his display case, along with all these foot casts, was one of Shaquille O'Neal's tennis shoes. Somehow he got his hands on one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And I swear to God, Shaquille O'Neal has bigger feet than Bigfoot.
No way.
Oh, hell, like almost 24 inches long. I mean, you could probably walk on water if you wanted to.
Shoot. But I might have to invest in a pair of those in case we have a flood.
There you go. Well, I'll buy this one off, Larry. I think it's pretty cool because, people say, well, one of the things they argue is, nothing can have a foot that big. And then you go, okay, so have you ever heard of Shaq?
Right.
But yeah, not nearly as wide as these, but longer in most cases. The biggest one I ever found was 21 inches.
Jeez.
And that was early on. I've not seen one that big since. I thought it was 18 inches, but Peter Byrne was with me, and I'm assuming you know who Peter Byrne is. I may be wrong. But he's my 94-year-old best friend and pioneer researcher.
Oh, cool.
But anyway, he came out and investigated, and I said, I'm measuring 18 inches, and he goes, no, you remove the stick. What? Pull the stick out of the way, and it went another 3 inches after that, so a total of 21. And there was a successive one, too, which was cool, because it was the opposite foot, but it was like 4.5 feet away from the other.
So how tall do you think the tallest one is?
Oh, I could tell you what I've been told.
Right.
Which is neither here nor there. I mean, there's exceptions in every species. I mean, just look at us humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go to a shopping mall and just do a little people watching, and you'll find out, we come in all shapes and sizes and whatnot. But I tend to think the median height is around 8 feet.
Oh, wow.
But I've heard crazy, 12, 15-foot stuff. But we have Shaq, right?
Right.
Maybe they just found the Godzilla of Bigfoot. But I'd say the male's about 8 feet, females around 7.
You get him and Yao Ming out there with the outfit on, shoot some evidence.
There you go.
So, have you ever come across their scat? And
yes.
Okay, now what's the difference between theirs and others?
Okay, well, in one case, well, let me back up a little bit. They have, I believe, pretty much the same dietary menu as a bear, black bear, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe they're omnivore, just based on resources throughout the year. You'd have to, in the winter, switch to more of a meat diet,
Mm-hmm.
or hibernate. I don't believe they do that.
Do you think they migrate?
Within a certain range, yes. Not as a rule.
Mm-hmm.
Another estimate that Dr. Henner Fehrenbach came up with, and he's a primatologist, if I didn't mention that before.
Mm-hmm.
But he estimates that a single animal, based on the caloric intake that he extrapolated and the resources that are in, say, the Coast Range, would need about 60 square miles annually to one animal. So that's a pretty good swath, but you're talking 20 to 30 miles.
Right.
Now, to us, that's alone, maybe it's going to be a 2-day hike.
Right.
To them, it's probably about a 10. They could probably cover that in 10 hours.
Wow. Because they got a hell of a stride.
So, well, like my friend said, Sergeant Jeff Martin, the guy that told me he had seen him, he said they weren't running because he saw them actually moving. I saw him doing this back and forth thing. He saw them moving because he saw them at a little different time period than I did. But he said they weren't running, but they were sure eating up a hell of a lot of real estate walking.
Right.
So, and I think that, goes to the stride and the power that they have, that,
Yeah.
they probably walk at our jogging pace, without breaking a sweat, without lifting a foot, or at least not lifting 2 feet at the same time.
No, go. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, people say the way their locomotion is very smooth, almost like there's no head bob that humans have when they're walking down the road. It's like they're almost on cross-country skis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
They're very graceful, but very quick, without trying to be.
Without trying to be, yeah. So, this get back to talking about their scat.
Right.
Does
Right.
I was going to ask you, has that ever been analyzed for DNA?
So, I was going to tell you about the short answer is not to my knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was going to tell you about the first scat sample I had found, but I'm going to jump to the second because I think it was a little more, at least I had it analyzed by, again, Dr. Fehrenbach, who worked at the Oregon Regional Primate Center outside of Portland. And anyway, this was in conjunction with an investigation, and one that I really feel was one of the most successful that I'd done. And it was back in 2000, summer of 2000. I'll tell you how far back it is. I had a pager.
Yeah, I remember those things.
Yeah. And cell phones were the size of books. No, but anyway, I got this page from some friends of mine. A couple gals I knew were down at Detroit Lake, which is east of the capital, Salem. And that they had an experience, which basically was a local experience. They were fishing on a fishing dock that went out in the lake, and it was just right after sunset. And there was one other guy, maybe 100 yards down the way, and just after the sun sets, they hear this extremely loud roar. But it's dark. It's starting to get dark, and it's coming from down where this other fisherman is. And she said it was so loud it echoed on the other side of the lake and came back. And she said it was not any animal that, you could associate it with. They reeled in real quick and started running off the dock, and by the time they got to the end of the dock, this fisherman was running past the end of the dock on the trail, right past them, and they just, without saying anything, got in behind and ran with them, and they got back to the park where there were some people, the campground. Caught their breath. They go, girls go, "Did you hear that thing?" And the guy goes, "Hear it? That son of a bitch was right behind me." And, well, we got on that within, and when I say we, I had Joe Beelart with me. He's a local author and speaker. He came with me. We were there within 11 hours, which is pretty damn quick when it comes to, usually it's a week or 2 or 3 weeks after something happened. But we were right on this one. And Joe went with the gals on the trail was kind of like a football-shaped trail, if you will. It was a loop that came off the campground. One part went along the lake, and one went maybe 100 feet off the lake, on its return loop. Anyway, Joe went down with the girls on the lakeside, and I went inside. And I'm walking down a trail that it just is like August, so there's grass actually starting to grow up through the trail, except in this one spot I saw that it looked like somebody, if you could have got a car in there, but you couldn't, it looked like somebody almost peeled off with a car tire. I'm like, that's interesting. It was dry, and every part of the trail but that one spot had this big divot taken out of it. So I get up to it, and I look to my right, and I see, where this big divot is, I see a trail coming out of the ferns. These ferns were like 4 feet high, sword ferns. And you could look, it looked like they were it almost looked like you did run a car through there. I mean, it was completely crushed down, going into that patch between me and the lake. On the other side, I see this scat. And this happened to line up with the whole thing, the trail, the mark on the trail, the path coming to that mark, and then here's the scat next to this boulder. And it was fresh, pretty fresh. But it almost looked like you took a can of mud, like almost a bucket of mud, because it don't mean to be gross, but it was definitely fecal matter, and it was very loose, but it had flattened down the grass where it had hit it, and then you could see beyond that where it kept going through the brush. So I thought, I need to catch that up. Anyway, we found tracks. We found, I went in. I found a bed that was not like a regular oval-shaped deer or elk bed. It was very almost square, like you had lowered a freezer, in the middle of these ferns. But anyway, getting back to the scat. Put it in a Ziploc bag. We put it in a cooler And this is, got to keep in mind, this is like, DNA was just coming in to fashion, and it was very cost prohibitive. It still is. It's getting cheaper, but back then it was out of my budget. So, but I did give it to the good doctor, and he took it to the lab. His expertise is electron microscopy, so he's got this, microscope from hell that can, make a hair on a flea look like a tree.
Yeah.
And change the backlighting and do different things for different reasons anyway. He was our go-to for hair, so I thought, hey, maybe it's like a pile of crap. And thankfully he did. And I can't remember exactly how he processed it. He was able to break the organic matter down. And he was able to come up with a couple of things. Every animal, including humans, have certain parasites that live within us.
Mm-hmm.
They live symbiotically with us, and there's a difference between a parasite, say, that are in a canine stool or than a horse stool.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a fingerprint, if you will. A lot of times you can narrow it down at least what it isn't. He was able to scientifically identify them by their proper binomial species names in a report I got back from him. 6 different either live parasites. It was that fresh.
Wow.
Well, I'll put it this way. We spent the night at the campground. When I opened the cooler the next day, this sample was crawling. Put it that way.
Mm.
But anyway, he was able to identify 6 different parasites, either alive, dead, or by their egg casings themselves, and which I found interesting. He said that combination
mm-hmm.
could be found in a number of Pacific Northwest omnivores. So there's that. The other thing he was able to determine was the diet. And this diet was 97% watercress.
Wow.
And if you just walk to the edge of the lake and look down, it grows all along the shoreline there.
Right.
And, I mean, you can get watercress in the store.
Mm-hmm.
For salads, right? Well, it's free up there. And I could just see him, middle of the night, gorging himself on watercress. It's easy to get to. Plentiful. And probably went back and took a nap in the ferns, and come sundown, woke up, saw the fisherman. It screamed, he screamed, the fisherman ran one way, the Bigfoot ran the other way. You could put it all together. We had all the pieces. So, and then the next morning we were able to find a trackway.
Man.
So that's a long way to get around.
Right? Okay.
Sorry.
Now, Darren mentioned something else, and I've asked other people that have been on the show that do the same thing you do. Do you believe that maybe they're alien or maybe an interdimensional being?
I was waiting for that question. Like a slow motion train wreck. Short answer is no.
No.
No, and I'll tell you why. Been doing this too long, almost 27 years in April, and I think that's a stretch. I think it's an excuse. I think it's a cop-out, and I think people get frustrated. It's not to say you don't have people that are just born that way. Trust me, about every third person I talk to has a little bit of that going on, and I'm just not ready to make that jump. I don't have a problem. I gave you the BB analogy. I mean, it's not that hard. For these things to outmaneuver you, hear you, see you, smell you. You can't tell me that for every deer you've seen, 1,000 haven't seen you already. You just never saw them.
Sure.
And that's the same. I mean, the thing with these creatures, these beings, whatever you want to call them, is it's not about going out there and trying to find them. It's about going out there and hope they try to find you. And that's pretty much how it works. They control the encounter, and you just gotta. It's a lottery. I mean, it's right place, right time, and right Bigfoot, I guess. And I think I was very fortunate and lucky to see them. I've gotten actually much closer to them than I did when I saw them. I mean, I've smelled them.
Wow.
Oh yeah. Once is enough. Yeah, and of that I have absolutely no doubt. But no, it's got to be on their terms. My expeditions consist of basically getting your butt out to one area and try to blend in as best you can. Keep a low profile, put out some things that if they're in the area, and if you're there long enough, they will probably pass through there. Put some things out there that are going to pique their attention, pique their interest. I think they're extremely curious, and no better example than to have 3 of these things show up under circumstances where we just set off probably 250 pounds of C4 plastic explosive and sent a big mushroom cloud up in the air. I know, because I saw it from a distance. You would think every animal in that area would be 365 degrees in every direction away from that area. Right. Yet within an hour or maybe less, they were literally standing where those craters were. We literally left craters. They were standing right there. They came down to check it out. That, to me, shows curiosity, and curiosity, I think, is a sign of intelligence, to the point that they were willing to steel themselves to push back any fear. It was more important for them to investigate than it was to, they were willing to take that risk, and that tells me that they're drawn to trying to understand what we're doing in their woods, blowing up their neighborhood. No, I think the best way, I did 2 expeditions, one in 94 and another in 98 on location where I had my sighting, and they were called Operation Entice Contact, and obviously the second one was Operation Entice Contact 2. It wasn't about chasing them down. You're wasting your time. It's about finding a good area to the best of the data, that's the most recent data you can find, or has a high degree of activity at a certain time of year. Like Jane Goodall or Diane Fossey, you've got to live in their world.
Right.
And you got to, and not just pass through in a weekend. You got to go out there to the point where after a week goes by, they're going to go, I guess we should go meet the neighbors. These guys aren't leaving. That's kind of how it works. I think they'll watch you from a distance, and they'll watch you close up over time. But you've got to, I really think you've got to give them a reason other than curiosity, or at least I would think you could enhance it, whether it be with bait or some trinks, hanging chemical light sticks on fishing wire in a tree.
Mm-hmm.
It glows at night. It's pretty. It doesn't make a noise, and it's harmless. And
Yeah. Well,
things like that.
We have actually run over this evening, but no worries, because I've enjoyed listening to you. But I want to have one more question from Darren, and real quick, and then we'll kind of end it there. But he wants to know, if you were to ever catch a Bigfoot, what would you do with one?
If I ever what now?
If you ever caught a Bigfoot, what would you do with one?
Well, I caught one. I think the question would be, what would it do with me? But, whatever it wants, I suppose. No, I don't know that one needs to be captured, and I've come full circle from thinking that one needs to be sacrificed for the good of the rest of the rest of them, and just being able to be able to enact some sort of protections for them. But as it stands right now, it's open season. There are no laws out there, and we at the American Primate Conservative intend to change that. We've got a plan to first go through Native Americans and First Nations tribes, and these are the people that we've been here 300 years, and they've been here, I think at last count, about 19,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they know a little bit more about these things than we do, and it's part of their culture, it's part of their heritage, it's part of their spirituality and everything else. And to be able to approach them and say, hey, we respect and honor your culture, your legends. We believe these things exist. They do. Let us help you draft a tribal law, because they have total anonymity out there on their reservations. It's their show and their laws. They could easily put something like that together, and they should do it and be proud to do it and say, hey, this is, we're smarter than the white guy, because they won't even recognize these things, and we've dealt with them for millennia.
Mm-hmm.
So, just basically go, we don't care if you don't believe it's real. If you shoot one, we're going to shoot you.
Right. Or you can just get those guys from Mountain Monsters to build you a trap.
Oh, Lord. No, but I'm serious. I think you get one tribe to sign on, and I think it would kind of spread like wildfire. And I don't mean just the United States. I mean North America and what have you. Just as a matter of, this is our tradition. We're honoring our tradition by putting a law that says we, as a nation, agree that these things are out there and don't mess with them. Without, I don't think it would necessarily curtail research, but you'd have to be qualified and get a permit and all that good stuff. But you couldn't bug them. You wouldn't be able to harass them or change any of their behavior. You could observe them from afar, kind of thing. I think it could be done. And if they do it, then it's going to make a lot easier argument to make to non-natives. But anyway, getting back to, I guess maybe if I didn't catch one, but I found one,
mm-hmm.
I wasn't feeling well. I think, just for, without being graphic, if it's already dead, whether a motor vehicle accident or it tripped and fell off a cliff or whatever, I would definitely take some personal samples
mm-hmm.
that nobody would know where they were. I would take the rest of the carcass. That's funny you should ask, they just reminded me, I was working with Dr. Richard Greenwell on an expedition, and he had this whole I'll have to see if I can find that. But he had this whole thing drawn up, an agreement with a private university that they were going to. They had signed a contract that they would take the specimen and basically, I assume, do an examination on it and try to, get some information as far as DNA and all that good stuff. But that would be sad if that happened. I mean, ourselves, we've used biopsy darts. These are like tranquilizer darts, but instead of having drugs in them, they have a specialized hollow needle that's made to, when it hits the animal, fall right back out, but in the process take out a core sample that's about an inch long of tissue. So you'd be getting the hair, the epidermal, the dermal, and the fatty tissues and some blood. Just one, if you could get one dart, it can go on its way, and there's absolutely no debating about it. It is what it is. Of course, you hope you don't really make it mad.
Right.
With the needle, but no, they've used these with other wildlife. But that's the kind of thing, the union of, what they call it, the union, UCNC, it's a conservation group, Union of Conservation of Nature, based out of Amsterdam. They have what they call a red list, and we think when we talk about the health of a species, we think, okay, it's either threatened, endangered, or extinct. Well, there's actually 9 different categories, and IUCN has one category, and these are basically levels of health, and they have one that's called data insufficient. I swear to God that they could apply. It just says, doesn't mean we don't have any data, and there's plenty of data out there, but they have a category. They're the ones that actually apply the taxonomic names, and they're the ones that, like Homo sapien or Canis lupus or what have you. They're the guys that do that. And I don't know why that could not be applied to these. It's just not that there's not data, just not enough.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's protection for.
Well, I tell you what, man, I would love to have you back on the show again because you have lots of wonderful stories to tell.
Oh, I know. It's been 26 plus years worth it. Hope I didn't bore anybody.
Well, if people wanted to follow you on social media, do you have somewhere like on Facebook, Instagram that they could follow you?
Oh yeah. Well, I've thank you for asking. I've got just under my name, Todd Neiss. That's a Facebook page. That's my personal one. I have another under American Primate Conservancy. And we have a website, which is americanprimate.org. And lastly, I don't know, have you ever heard of a gathering called Bigfoot?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, this is something that my wife and I have done for a dozen years now, and it's bringing researchers only from all around the world to an annual gathering here in the Oregon Coast Range. And so there's, if you want to see what that's like, it is invitation only, but I mean, really, everybody who's anybody in this field has been there at one time or another. Just browse through the gallery, and you can see a little bit of some of our work we do there as well. But anyway, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, we appreciate you, and I definitely would like to invite you back on at a later date. And to be honest with you, I didn't really have a huge interest in Bigfoot until I started interviewing people that were in the field. And from what I've heard, sounds like there's some pretty cool evidence out there, and I would love to go on a hunt one day.
Well, you should. And supposedly you've got some of them down in your neck of the woods too. I don't know as far as Austin, but
that's all my ex-in-laws.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're hiding out near Houston.
Okay. That makes sense. Anyway, well, call anytime, and if you ever find yourself up in Oregon, feel free to come by and visit.
I will do that. That's actually on our bucket list.
Yeah, well, you fly right over my house, usually right just south of Mount Hood, coming into Portland International. So anyway,
I will do it. One day I will do it.
You got my phone number, right?
Actually, I'll message you after the show's over, and I'll get all our information exchanged and all that good stuff.
Go boy.
Thank you for joining us on Into the Pit. Please follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network and Instagram at The Vibes Broadcast.